Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The sun hung low in the sky over Earth, casting long shadows across the battlefield. The Autobot base sat in a serene moment of peace, a rare occurrence in the ever-raging war with the Decepticons. Optimus Prime stood tall, his metal frame reflecting the fading light as he gazed over the horizon. Behind him, Bumblebee, his loyal friend and most trusted scout, approached with a silent, measured pace. Optimus Bumblebee's voice was tinged with concern. "Do you really think this peace will last?" Optimus turned to face him, his faceplate unreadable. "It never does, Bumblebee, but we must savor these moments. They remind us of what we fight for." Bumblebee nodded, his usual upbeat energy subdued. Optimus noticed, but to deep breath. Bumblebee had been distant lately, quieter than normal, but after all they'd been through, it wasn't too surprising. The war had taken its toll on everyone. Little did Optimus know, this was not the only reason for Bumblebee's behavior. Unbeknownst to the Autobots, a shadow was moving against them. Megatron, hidden deep within his fortress, had been plotting in silence. He had long been searching for a way to destabilize the Autobots, to strike at their very heart, and he had finally found it. A sinister device, pulsing with dark energy, lay before him. Starscream hovered in the background, his usual sarcastic tone barely held back. "You really think that thing will work?" Megatron's crimson optics glowed brighter as he turned toward Starscream. "You doubt my genius?" Starscream cried. His voice was cold and threatening. "This device will not only work, it will turn the Autobots' greatest weapon into my own." Starscream sneered but remained silent. He knew better than to challenge Megatron's will at this moment. With a calculated precision, Megatron activated the device, and it whirred to life with a low, haunting hum. He had chosen his target carefully, Bumblebee, the one Autobot who could move silently through enemy territory, the one Optimus Prime trusted above all others. If he could turn Bumblebee against the Autobots, chaos would ensue. Hours later, Bumblebee set out on a reconnaissance mission. Optimus had trusted him with a simple scouting task near Decepticon territory. The area had been quiet for too long, and Optimus feared a trap. Bumblebee's yellow frame glided through the desert, his wheels kicking up dust as he approached the Decepticon stronghold. That's when the ambush struck. Before Bumblebee could react, a barrage of lasers hit his sides, throwing him into a spin. His system scrambled, but he quickly regained control and transformed, weapon ready. But it was too late. He was surrounded, and in the midst of the attackers, Megatron appeared, towering over him. "Bumblebee," Megatron's voice oozed with malice. "I've been expecting you." Bumblebee fired at Megatron without hesitation, but his shots were deflected by the Decepticon leader's set of force field. Before he could fire again, a dark shadow swept over him, and he felt his system seize. His optics flickered as the mysterious device hummed ominously, tendrils of energy wrapping around him, penetrating his mind. What are you doing?" Bumblebee stammered, his voice glitching as his body betrayed him. Megatron's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You'll see soon enough, Bumblebee." Bumblebee fought against the tendrils of control, but it was no use. His body was no longer his own. The world around him dimmed as his will was snuffed out like a candle in a storm. When Bumblebee returned to the Autobot base, no one noticed the difference at first. He moved and spoke like his usual self, but behind his cheerful facade, Megatron's control lingered in the dark corners of his mind. Optimus welcomed him back, relieved that the mission had been uneventful. Days passed, and strange things began to happen. Autobots found their operations mysteriously compromised. Communications were intercepted, supply routes sabotaged. Optimus grew suspicious, but the idea that one of his own might be responsible never crossed his mind until Bumblebee's behavior became too hard to ignore. During a particularly dangerous mission, Bumblebee's actions almost led to the team's destruction. Optimus had given him a clear order, but Bumblebee had hesitated, allowing the Decepticons to launch a devastating counterattack. Afterward, Ratchet pulled Optimus aside, his voice low. "Optimus, something's wrong with Bumblebee." Optimus shook his head. He's been through a lot. "Ratchet, we all have." "Maybe it's just trap." "No," Ratchet insisted. "This is different. His system's there, something off. I think Megatron's done something to him." The words hung in the air like a thick fog wrapping around Optimus' thought. Could Megatron have somehow tampered with Bumblebee? The idea was almost too painful to bear, but the signs were there, clear as day. Optimus called a private meeting with the core team Ratchet, RSS, Ironhide, and Proud. Together, they discussed the strange occurrences surrounding Bumblebee. Ratchet presented his findings, showing subtle but undeniable changes in Bumblebee and neural pattern. He saw him being controlled. Ratchet concluded grimly, it's the only explanation. Optimus' face was a mask of stoic resolve, but inside his spark ached. Bumblebee was like a son to him, one of his most trusted companions. If Megatron had indeed taken control of him, they would need to act fast. Ironhide, always blunt and pragmatic, spoke first. We need to take him down, Optimus. If he said working for Megatron, there's no telling what damage he will do. No, RC countered sharply. We can't just give up on him like that. There has to be a way to save him. Optimus raised his hand, silencing them both. We will not abandon Bumblebee. But we must be prepared for the worst. Ratchet, is there a way to reverse this control? Ratchet hesitated maybe, but I need more data. I need to get close to Bumblebee, access his systems directly. Thalasarsky Prowl noted. If he's under Megatron's control, he could turn on us at any moment. I know, Ratchet admitted, but it's on the way. Optimus stood, towering over the group. His voice was heavy with the weight of leadership. Then we'll do whatever it takes. Bumblebee is one of us. We'll bring him back, no matter the cost. The hunt for Bumblebee began that night. He had left the base under the guise of another mission, but this time, the Autobots knew the truth. He wasn't trusting on his own. He was following Megatron's orders, and the Autobots were determined to stop him before he could cause further harm. As they tracked Bumblebee through a dense forest on the outskirts of the city, tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Ironhide gripped his weapon tightly, his eyes scanning the trees for any sign of their former ally. Do we have a plan, Archie? Asked her voice barely above a whisper. Find him, subdue him, and give Ratchet time to work. Optimus replied. His optics flickered with determination, though his heart was heavy. He didn't want to fight Bumblebee, but if it came down to it, he would do what was necessary to save him. They found Bumblebee in a clearing, standing eerily still, his yellow frame gleaming in the moonlight. His optics glowed faintly, but there was no sign of the familiar spark that once filled him with life. Optimus stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. Bumblebee. Can you hear me? Bumblebee said, head tilted slightly, as if considering the question, then without warning, he lunged. The attack was swift, brutal, and unlike anything the Autobots had ever seen from their friend. Bumblebee moved with a precision and lethality that could only be attributed to Megatron's influence. His strikes were calculated, aimed to disable, not kill. Optimus fought defensively, blocking each of Bumblebee's blows, while trying to reach the real Bumblebee buried deep beneath Megatron's self-control. Bumblebee, this isn't you, Optimus shouted, his voice ringing through the clearing. Fight it. Bumblebee hesitated for a brief moment, his optics flickering. But then the control tightened once more, and he attacked with renewed vigor. Ironhide fired a warning shot, barely missing Bumblebee's side. We don't have time for this, Prime. We need to take him down now. Wait, Ratchet cried, give me a chance. With a burst of speed, Ratchet rushed toward Bumblebee, dodging his attacks as he reached out to access Bumblebee's internal system. Ratchet moved quickly, his tools already humming as he tried to connect to Bumblebee's inner system. Bumblebee lashed out, nearly catching him with a powerful strike, but Optimus intercepted the blow, shielding Ratchet just long enough for him to establish the link. Ratchet's optics narrowed in concentration as he worked trying to access the core of the mind control device embedded deep within Bumblebee. Just a little longer, Ratchet muttered, beads of stress showing in his face as Bumblebee fought back with unrelenting force. Every second felt like an eternity. Optimus struggled to keep Bumblebee at bay without hurting him. The punches exchanged between them weren't lethal, but each hit rattled his frame, making it harder to keep his balance. The pain wasn't just physical, it ran deeper, a wound in his spark as he watched Bumblebee, his friend, attacking him with an unyielding intensity that wasn't his own. Arcese and Ironhide flanked Bumblebee, ready to step in if things went too far. Arcese's blasters were primed, but she hesitated. Bumblebee had been one of them for so long. To fight him like this was almost unthinkable. Bumblebee swung a fist toward Ratchet, knocking away one of his tools, but Ratchet quickly scrambled to retrieve it. I am almost there. just hold him off. Optimus blocked another strike, then grappled with Bumblebee, locking arms as they fought. Bumblebee, listen to me, you can fight this. You have to fight it. For a moment, Bumblebee faltered, his optics flickered, the glow dimming slightly. A brief pause, barely perceptible, but it was enough for Ratchet. He seized the opening and sent a surge of energy through his connection to Bumblebee lead systems, disrupting the flow of Megatron's control. A shockwave rippled through Bumblebee's body, and he staggered back, his frame twitching as conflicting commands battled within him. Optimus stepped forward again, his voice filled with hope. You're stronger than this, Bumblebee. You've always been strong, don't let him control you. Bumblebee let out a strangled sound, somewhere between a growl and a groan as his internal systems fought against themselves. Ratchet's countermeasure was working, but it wasn't Turi enough. Megatron's control ran deeper than they had anticipated. Suddenly, Bumblebee's optics locked onto Optimus, and for a split second, something flickered within them, something familiar, something like the old Bumblebee. But then just as quickly, the darkness surged back and Bumblebee roared in defiance, breaking free from Optimus' grip. His movements became more erratic, more violent. It was as if Megatron's device, sensing its control slipping, was tightening its grip with renewed fury. Optimus braced himself for another attack, but Bumblebee hesitated again, his hands trembling as if struggling to follow through. Ratchet seized the moment and activated the final sequence of his override program. Now, Ratchet shouted. A powerful surge of energy rippled through Bumblebee's frame, causing him to drop to one knee. He clutched his head as the tendrils of Megatron's control slowly unraveled. His optics flickered, the red glow dimming, replaced by the soft blue light that had once been a symbol of his loyalty. Optimus cautiously approached Bumblebee. Bumblebee remained on the ground, breathing heavily as if his systems were struggling to recalibrate. His voice came out in a hoarse, broken tone. Optimus, I didn't mean to. It sounds okay, Optimus said softly, kneeling beside him. You're so back now, you with us. Bumblebee and optics locked onto Optimus, the guilt and pain in his gaze unmistakable. I hurt you. I hurt all of you. I couldn't stop it. Optimus placed a hand on Bumblebee's shoulder, the weight of it both reassuring and firm. You weren't to yourself, Bumblebee. None of this was your fault. The forest around them grew still as the tension began to fade. Arceus and Ironhide lowered their weapons, relief evident in their body language. Though the emotional toll was still raw, Bumblebee had returned, but at what cost? Ratchet stepped forward, his tools still buzzing with the remnants of energy from the procedure. The device that Megatron implanted in Bumblebee is destroyed. He won't be able to control him anymore. Bumblebee shook his head, still haunted by what he'd done. But I let him in. I couldn't fight it. Optimus cut him off gently. You fought as hard as you could. That's all any of us can do. For a long moment, they stood there in the stillness of the forest, each of them processing what had just happened. Bumblebee had been saved, but the damage done would linger both to him and to the Autobots as a whole. Back at the base, the atmosphere was somber, despite their success. Bumblebee had been repaired physically, but the emotional scars were deep. He kept his distance from the others, his usual optimism dulled by the weight of his guilt. He couldn't stop replaying the moments in his mind, the times when he'd attacked his friends, had betrayed them even though he hadn't wanted to. Optimus watched him from a distance, knowing that this wound would take time to heal. Bumblebee wasn't just any soldier. He was a symbol of everything the Autobots fought for: the courage, the loyalty, the spirit of never giving up. If Megatron had succeeded in breaking him, what hope did they have? Ratchet approached Optimus, his tone cautious. He's stable. But it's gonna take time. Megatron's device did more than just control him. It broke something inside. Optimus nodded, his optics dark with thought. We'll give him that time. He deserves it. But Megatron wasn't done yet. In his fortress, far from the Autobot base, Megatron stood before a series of monitors, watching as his plan unraveled. Bumblebee had broken free, and the Autobots had survived yet another of his schemes. But this was merely a setback. The device he had used on Bumblebee had been a prototype, an experiment. He turned to Starscream, who was smirking from the shadows. It appears your plan didn't work after all, Megatron. Megatron's ass optics flared with anger, but he remained composed. On the contrary, Starscream, this was merely the beginning. The device I used on Bumblebee was but a first step. Starscream tilted his head, his curiosity piqued. A first step. Megatron nodded, his lips curling into a sinister grin. Bumblebee may have escaped this time, but I now know the full extent of the Autobot's weaknesses. They will not be so fortunate next time. He turned to the console in front of him, inputting a series of commands on the screen. Schematics for a new device appeared larger, more powerful, and far more dangerous. "This war is far from over," Megatron said, his voice dripping with malevolence. "And when the time comes, I will break them all." Back at the Autobot base, Bumblebee stood in front of the large, open hangar, staring out at the sky. The stars twinkled above, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the battles still to come. But for now, the only battle he was fighting was the one within himself. Optimus approached, standing beside him in silence for a moment before speaking. "You will heal, Bumblebee," Optimus said softly. "It will take time, but you will find your way back." Bumblebee didn't respond immediately, his optics still focused on the stars. "I don't know if I can ever be the same." Optimus placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. "None of us are the same after this war, but we keep moving forward together." Bumblebee finally turned to look at him, the weight of his emotions evident in his expression. "Thank you, Optimus." They stood there in silence, the stars above them shining down like silent witnesses to the ongoing struggle. But even in the quiet, there was a sense of hope, a hope that despite everything they would endure. As the night stretched on, Bumblebee felt the faint stirrings of that hope within himself. He wasn't Tarhol yet, but maybe, just maybe, he could be. And as long as he had Optimus and the other Autobots by his side, he knew that no matter what Megatron threw at them next, they would face it together.